Good morning, I'm back with another one, guys, and it's just a quick one to show people how I'm using the fair value gaps and how to use the fair value gaps and looking at liquidity areas and things along them lines. So what it is with a fair value gap, it's a bit like a gap in the market. Let me see if I can find a gap in the market on one of these. Let me have a look on the weekly. Yeah, we've got one right there, what I did mark out. So can you see how we've got a gap here on the weekly on the Dow Jones? So we've got a gap here. Okay. And what you'll generally see is that gap there, so you're marking it from wick to wick, price generally taps into it if you're in bullish momentum like this, or if you're in, if you've got bearish momentum as well, it generally taps into the gap that it creates before going that same way as what it's gonna go. So the Dow Jones, we had a lot of bullish momentum. It retraced down. How much did it retrace? It retraced 20%, came into that gap. Didn't fully fill the gap, but gaps don't always get filled fully. Sometimes they'll just tap into the gap and then they'll continue up. So it tapped into that gap and then had a big push off and then took 40%. So if I were to take a long on the Dow Jones, I would be putting my long in the midpoint. So I think I've shown you before how to mark out a midpoint of the gap. So you'll get a fib tool. You go from that wick to that wick there. And then you'll get your horizontal line. And you'll mark out that midpoint. It's not going to be perfect, but you see what I mean. So I'd have marked out that midpoint there. I'd have then gone long at this area. I'd have put my stop. A lot of people like to, you can either put it underneath the gap there or underneath this last swing point, which will probably be around there. And then you're going to be looking at this liquidity here to take out. So you're going to be putting it there. Great risk to reward. You can even take profits on the way up, or you can add to the trade. You could have just let it run, took off 50% once you've hit that area there, move your stop loss up to break even, or even in profit to below here. I'd have probably put it at break even. I'd have took 50% off there, and then you could have just let it run, continuously run, which would have been a nice little trade. So right, that's how we're using fair value gaps. They're like gaps in a normal market, yeah? Okay, so we'll go back down into near, go to the monthly on the near. So let's have a look at the gaps that it's created. So we've had bearish gaps that have been created here, to that wick there. We've already marked out that midpoint. So then you'll get this here, your fib tool. Put it up to there. Get your midline into there. And can you see how it perfectly lines up with the midpoint where it's been rejected once and twice? You take a quick short in there on the open of that candle. So we got a short on that open of that candle. Put your stop above that fair value gap. And you're going to be aiming for the next fair value gap, which is just below there. Which is not a great risk to reward. so I probably wouldn't have taken it. But if you'd have gone down to the lower time frame, you could have found a better entry. You have a look here. We've got a supply zone there. We go short at the midpoint. Put the stop just above the supply zone, which is above that swing high. You target down here at this liquidity point here, and it's a 542. Great risk to reward. So back to the monthly. So we've got here, we've got another small bullish fair value gap inside there, which is around there. Open it up a bit. Let's mark out this fair value gap. Get your fib tool. Mark out the midpoint. Remember, this is on the monthly. Let's try to get it straight there. Remove the fib tool. Set your entry there. Aim for the top of that fair value gap. I'll be taking a long in there. If it stops me out, it stops me out. I've got another opportunity here to take another long if it retraces that far. I don't think it's going to retrace that far, but you know, disclaimer, it's not financial advice, but this is how I'm looking at the charts. There will be my long setup. If it doesn't do that and it does come down into here, I'll be putting it below that area there. I'll still be aiming for this area up here. I'll probably take 50% off around that area there. I'll move my stop loss then to break even and let that ride out. There's two probability setups, high probability setups for you. RNDR, I've got something similar going on here. We have got another bullish fair value gap here. So the fib, if you want to create your own fib where it's a midpoint fib, so normally on a normal fib you'll have them selected, possibly them selected. So all you're going to do is you're just going to deselect all them. You're going to keep the 0.5 level, the 1 and the 0 level. See, I've already got one there, midpoint. Press OK when you're into here. Save as. That's how you create your midpoint tool. Get your horizontal. You put your horizontal in. So there's another high probability setup for you right there that you can look at. I did say in the last video about BTC. I'm just gonna have a little look at BTC right now. Let's have a little look at BTC. So keep them in mind. They're a couple of high probability setups that I will be taking. We've got, where's BTC? Let's go down into BTC. That's the setup. I showed you that in my previous video. I think BTC is going to come down into this area here. Fire off, take out all-time high, and then go back into the bear market. But I don't think it's going to go any lower than this area here. Round 27 to 33. Keep an eye on BTC. If the fair value gaps confuse you, just send me a quick message, and I'll go from there, and I'll try and teach you as much as I can. In my last video, I put a little thing at the end of the video where I've got something called this is thanks to Andre, who's in the group that I'm in. Something called Buy Me a Coffee. It's where you can just send a little donation. You don't have to send a donation. I'm not saying you have to send a donation, because you don't. But it'll keep me motivated to keep bringing this content out to you. If you like the content, there's an option there for you to send me a little donation. I've had a lot of people asking if I'm going to do some sort of like paid YouTube or something along them lines. I'll think about it, and I'll let you know in one of my videos if I am going to do something along them lines. Right, we're into BTC dominance. At the minute, we're inside a big bearish fair value gap. It's nearly filled that fair value gap now, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's at midpoint of the fair value gap getting rejected. Do the same here. We'll get our fib tool. Find the midpoint of the fair value gap. We'll mark it out. Yeah. Just mark it out there. Yeah, it keeps getting rejected off that same point. 1, 2, 3, 4 times it's been rejected off that same point. If it breaks out at that point, then we might be going up to around 60%. Let's have a little look at the brush. Got the moving averages. So the only thing that's worrying me here is these moving averages. Want to see something along these lines, fill that gap. Let that start to come over and cross over like that. And then push down in this area here. That potentially be the top of the market and the bottom of BTC dominance. Come off of that. USDT dominance, I'm looking at something along these lines, coming up here, testing that area. Got another bearish fair value gap there. Let's have a little look at the bearish fair value gap and what it's actually doing. Yeah, we've nearly filled that bearish fair value gap out now. Also got another bearish fair value gap just up above there. Keep an eye on USDT dominance. Total 3. Got bullish fair value gap there. We've got another bullish fair value gap here, which aligns up with everything. See, I know a lot of people have been buying coins up here. You know, back before I first started trading, I were doing the same. We're in a bull run. It's going to keep going up. Blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, you're 10 grand down. The wife's not happy about it. It is what it is. I'll tell you what, she's happy this time though. Won't say no more about that. Go to ICP. Zoom in on ICP. These are the areas I'm looking at on ICP, where we can get a nice bit of bullish momentum coming into the market. Possible long areas round these areas. So if we mark out the midpoint, which is probably around something like that. Zoom it in a bit more. Let's pull that up. Your stop loss is going to be down here. It's below that gap. So I'd be putting it either there or there. And I reckon ICP ain't going to be doing that. But I reckon we're going to be looking at around that area, which is around the $100 area for ICP. Like I've said, not financial advice, but this is how I'm looking at the charts. For us to potentially, we need to start creating some more bullish momentum though. We need to start coming up these areas. We need to start doing something along these lines. Into there, flush out, create more fair value gaps, back in, test, flush out, more fair value gaps along the way up. That's what I'm looking at ICP. Matic, I said in my other video I won't touch Matic. It's not exactly a pretty chart. Solana, possible high probability setup here. Not saying it is going to do that, but I'll be looking at something along them lines. I'm not buying Solana around here. I'm not paying 122 for Solana, if I'm being honest with you. But you can look at this setup if you want. You don't have to take the setup, but keep an eye on that sort of setup there. Sui, I'm looking at this area here to potentially go long. We'll be keeping my eye on that. Theta, another one here on Theta. Keep your eye on this area, around these areas, to fill that gap out, potentially push off, because we have had a big bullish momentum in Theta there. What's the Dixie doing? I want to see something like that on the Dixie. I want to see it start to drop now. If it continues to pump it, crypto's going to keep dumping. But it is inside a bearish fair value gap at the minute. So we want to see it dip. And that's it really. That's all I'd come on to do. We'll just show you what I'm potentially looking at to get involved in. Showing you this before, chain exposed. If you don't know how to use that, like I say, send me a message and we'll go from there. And these are possible scenarios that are going to be occurring in the market. And I think that's it. I've covered what I need to cover today. And yeah, like I say, if you need any more information, just give me a message on YouTube and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. And that's it from me, guys. Happy trading. I'll catch you in the next one.